Today at 4 p.m., His Excellency President John Dramani Mahama outdoored Kwabena Duffuor, His Excellency the Vice President, as his running mate at a brief but very organized ceremony at the National Theatre. Tonight we are looking at the outdooring of the Vice President as the running mate of the NDC flag bearer, His Excellency the President, and then we're also going to consider Kwabena Duffuor, his political life, and then his choice as running mate. And I'm privileged to have with me Honorable Elvis Afriankra, who is the Deputy Minister for Local Government and Rural Development, and also the National Campaign Coordinator of John Mahama 2012 campaign. In the course of the program, we'll open the phone line so that our viewers can also join us via text, via phone. So you can ask your questions, your comments, and then we can have this discussion to be a very, very interactive discussion. I'll be back shortly from the break, and then we'll begin the discussion to walk into the life of Kwabena Duffuor, His Excellency the Vice President of the Republic of Ghana, and running mate to His Excellency President John Dramani Mahama. I'm your host, Felix Maulolo, and we are discussing NDC Outdoors running mates, Kwabena Duffuor. Honorable Elvis Afriankra is with me in studio. Honorable, welcome to Majority Caucus.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, for many of us who were not able to come to the National Theatre this afternoon, and then many of us also followed on radio, what exactly happened at the National Theatre today?
Well, this morning at around 11 a.m., His Excellency the President John Dramani Mahama, per the dictates of the Constitution of the NDC, met with the National Executive Committee. Prior to that, he had consulted with the Council of Elders, and that is also dictated by our Constitution, where he presented Dr. Kwabena Duffuor as his choice of running mate, and this was unanimously endorsed by the Council of Elders. And so today he met with the National Executive Committee, and he presented Kwabena Duffuor, and he was overwhelmingly and unanimously accepted by the National Executive Committee. And that, I would say, was a private party internal affair, and therefore it was found necessary that this evening we present him to the public. So that is what happened today.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. And then many of us knew Kwabena Duffuor only as the governor of the Bank of Ghana. What has been his political history within the NDC?
Well, I'm now speaking in my capacity as a former deputy campaign coordinator for President Mills, who traveled with President Mills before he became the flag bearer, and then also campaigned with him when he was flag bearer in 2004, and also as a deputy general secretary in charge of operations for the 2008 campaign. So I think that if you're talking about people who know the party, I count myself as one of the people who know the party and who knows what really goes on in the party. And I can say without any equivocation that Kwabena Duffuor has been one of the key activists in the engine room of the affairs of the NDC.
Okay.
Now, this is somebody who right from the time he completed university during the PNDC era, he was made a special assistant to the then Secretary for Finance, Dr. Kwesi Botwe. And you know that in those times, it takes a certain orientation. You must have a strong socialist orientation to be on board the PNDC.
Exactly so.
And many were those who came, and many were those who fell by the way. There are scores of people who came and fell by the way. But the mettle of Kwabena Duffuor is that he survived through all those periods and subsequently became a PNDC Secretary for Finance. Now, if you look at the Economic Recovery Program and the Structural Adjustment Program, this was a program in collaboration with our development partners that transformed our economy. You recall that in those days when the PNDC came to power, the economy was in shambles. Social infrastructure, there were no roads. Cocoa was it was stored up in villages. There were no railway lines, and there was a mass mobilization of people, the students, task forces, and there was a lot of structural transformation of the entire economy, liberalization. That is what brought the economy on its strong footing. And Kwabena Duffuor as the special assistant to the then minister, and then subsequently as a deputy PNDC secretary, was a key architect in these things. Now, he has a background in statistics and economics because he was a teaching assistant then in the University of Legon, so Ghana, Legon. So he has a very good understanding of the political economy. And then NDC 1, NDC 2, he was also a deputy minister of finance. So this is somebody whose work has been centered around issues of finance and economics. But when it comes to the party, he's been in fact, I can tell you that he's a very close friend of our late President Mills.
Okay.
He and Mr. Edianan, President Mills used to go and swim in Mr. Edianan's house. You know, Mr. Edianan, President Mills is an avid swimmer. He used to swim like an Olympic athlete. He could swim so many laps. And so when he was swimming, Mr. Edianan and Pakwesi and Mr. Atta were the people who were very close to them. In the 2004 campaign, we had now that is no more, I think I can say a few things. We had a private quiet office in Airport Hills, Regimanuel. We had a quiet that office belonged to Mr. Edianan, and it was Pakwesi Emisata who was manning that office, and that is where all the strategies and meetings went on. You know, so he's not somebody who is you may not see him on the platform, but he's been very, very key in the engine room of the NDC. In 2008, when I was in charge of operations, many of the things that we did behind the scenes in terms of planning, strategizing, because you realize that we had a very formidable system in place. You know, the Duffuor government had put things in place in such a manner that they wanted to annihilate the NDC, and that was the agenda. J.H. Mensah actually said it in public, and he was one of the people, together with other people that I may not want to mention, that we worked behind the scenes. I was frontal, but I was also working behind the scenes because I was in charge of operations. Operations involved so many things, intelligence, so many other things, and he was very, very pivotal. So he's not a stranger. Again, in the Central Region, he's a key member of the Central Regional Caucus, and he's a very well respected. That's why, you know, in the Central Region, he vibrates very positively there because they know him there. He goes around the communities, he deals with them, he supports them. That's one key factor. He supports them, and he's been supporting all of us. He's been supporting the structures, because you know that when to run a campaign, you need resources. He has the network, and so he's been very, very, very. So we were not surprised at all when His Excellency the President chose him as his Vice President, and today he's been confirmed as the running mate, and we are all very excited. That's
impressive. His Excellency the President made mention whilst delivering his address that when he met the National Executive Committee, in fact, Pakwesi Emisata was endorsed overwhelmingly and unilaterally. What do you think went into the unilateral endorsement of Pakwesi Emisata?
It's because they know. It's because they know him. It's because they know him. Everybody who has worked with the party, you know, at a certain level, you know that you must. It's a privilege to be not just an office holder, but to have the privilege to know the inner workings of the party, you know, where you attend strategic meetings. There are general meetings, you know, rallies, programs, and all that. But the thinking and for example, multimedia, okay, many people see people on screen, but perhaps the people who really run the show, who determine the direction, okay, the corporate direction, the vision, perhaps they've never been on air before, okay, and yet they are the people who determine what should go on. So from that perspective, those who have been in the running of the affairs of the party, who determine what should happen, what goes here, we all know Pakwesi Emisata. He's no stranger to us at all, and he's very sharp, he's very analytical, he's very deep. Yesterday, for instance, you know, and it's I don't know if I should say this, but it took us less than 12 hours to put this thing together. Okay. Because we you know that theoretically, I'm saying theoretically, our opponents have been campaigning for over 2 years, and we have about 3 months. And so it means that we need to move faster than we need to do things. Yes, we need to quicken the pace and make sure that we do a lot of things within a short space of time. So we had the option of, you know, waiting for another week or a few days. And some people were a bit worried, can you pull this together? But we said, no, we've been doing this thing for a long time. We have the capacity, and within 12 hours to put this thing together. And he encouraged us. He said, look, I'm ready to roll. I'm ready to hit the road, and then we were motivated and inspired by that.
Let's look at the potency of the ticket. His Excellency President John Dramani Mahama, an avid historian, an avid writer, somebody with a lot of passion in communication, and then His Excellency Kwabena Duffuor, an economist of such metal, and then internationally recognized, somebody who has been in the driving force. You mentioned from the structural adjustment days of the 1980s up to today, and then the phases that we've gone through our country economically. The potency of that ticket. How would you describe the ticket?
Let's look at the president first of all. I think that this is somebody who, he's the most prepared person for this job that he's seeking. He's the most, among all the people who are seeking office, they all have their qualities.
The most prepared person.
He's the most prepared, the most qualified, the most, this is somebody who comes from a political family. But that aside, that is just by the way. He was a member of parliament for Boli Bamboy. Boli Bamboy has become a household name because of who? His Excellency John Dramani Mahama. You mentioned Boli Bamboy is synonymous with John Mahama. You mentioned John Mahama, Boli Bamboy. He has lifted up the image of Boli Bamboy. And not just that, today as I speak to you, Boli Bamboy has a radio station. The impact that you make on the lives of your people as a member of parliament would show. And you can look at all the people who want to contest. What do they have to show? Some people, when you go to their villages or their towns, the towns are crumbling and collapsing. In Boli Bamboy, the works of John Mahama are there for all to see. Besides that, before then, he worked with Plan International. He worked with the Japanese embassy, and he said that he developed that work ethic. When he worked with the Japanese, that the Japanese have a certain work ethic. That is why President Mahama has that work ethic. I've been working with him, but this is exactly 1 week that he appointed me to manage him officially, and I'm amazed at the rate at which he works. It's incredible. Look, last week, for instance, we did 9 markets in a day. 9 markets. We set off in the morning by 8 o'clock, and 9:30 p.m. we were still on the road, and he was looking fresh. And the following day we got back, we were in a meeting and he was looking fresh, and I was tired. That he developed that work ethic by working with the Japanese, with their consistency, their focus, their vision, sticking to time. So he gathered that discipline. And then also in Parliament, he was a member of the Pan-African Parliament, so he has that exposure. He was also he was a director of communications for the party. So he's a true party man. When we were in opposition, he was a director of communications for the party, and then a deputy minister of communications, and subsequently a minister of communications. Now, one of the areas that Ghana has started to be growing, we are said to have almost 80% tele density or tele penetration, is the communication sector. Now, the person who put up the policies and the institutional framework for the telecom sector is no other person than John Dramani Mahama. The telecom sector has become the fastest growing sector of our economy. It's creating a lot of jobs. The corporate area is sponsorships and all that transformation. The whole structure of the economy is changing because of the critical role of the telecom sector. And it is because at a particular point in time, he was chairman of the National Communications Authority. This station in which we are sitting today, liberalization of the airways, that today we have over 100 and something radio stations, so many TV stations. John Mahama was chairman of NCA. He was pivotal in putting in place those institutional structures, because you see, for policies and things to go on, you need the right policy framework, you need the right institutional framework, and he was at a critical time was the one who led that vision and created the right institutional framework for those things to happen. Now, if you look at Ghana AIDS Commission, again, he was chairman of the AIDS Commission when our HIV/AIDS prevalence was very high. He led that campaign, he drove it, and today HIV/AIDS prevalence has gone down. And in so many things that he's done, that you can see his influence. VAT, for instance, VAT, the second phase repackage, he was a key person in the communications that brought VAT, that today we are getting GetFund and all kinds of money that some people do not understand the genesis of it, or pretend not to understand, and want to use it for, promise to use it for something that they don't even seem to know how to quantify. But we'll deal with that later. So that is President Mahama for you. And then as Vice President, very, he himself said that he was a very lucky Vice President, and he learned on the job. He got a lot of exposure in many instances, he was acting as president. So even though we were very sad to lose President Mins, we all loved him dearly. We were also very confident that with President Mahama, the country was in capable hands, because he has been president, he's been acting as president, he has done the job, the president sent him, the president was, you never know, sometimes these things are too deep, but the president was virtually grooming him. So he's ready. Nobody contesting today has ever been vice president before. Nobody contesting today has ever been president before. You know that some time ago, one president made some promises. He was not going to appoint too many ministers. He was not going to increase the price of petrol. He was not going to do this. He was not going to do this. When he came to office, he did those things. And all he had to do was to apologize that he did not know that this is the nature of the job. In John Mahama, you have somebody who's not going to tell you, I don't know. He's already on the seat. He's been on the seat. So he knows what is there. He knows what is in the kitty. So he will not make fantastic, wild promises that he cannot keep. He will make realistic promises that are achievable, attainable, taking into cognizance the realities of the time, and also having a vision that the country will move to another level. That is the kind of person, not somebody who is having fantasies and has been out of touch of the realities of governance, and then is just able to make promises, and then he'll come back and say he did not know what was happening. So you look at him, and then you look at our vice president, an economist of no mean repute. Now today, Ghana is reputed as having the fastest growing economy in the world.
14.4% of GDP the last time I checked.
And when we say these things, people jump and say, well, we are not seeing it and all that. First of all, the first point to make is that we did not create those marking schemes. We did not determine GDP as a measure of assessing the performance of an economy. These are time-tested methods that are used in Afghanistan, are used in Burkina Faso, are used in America, are used in everywhere in the world. These are theories that globally they are accepted. Economists, people of internationally and locally, look at the performance of the economy and they find a way to judge. And so they determine that these are the variables they will use. So in NDC 1, NDC 2, PNDC, MPP is the same method. In Nigeria, in Afghanistan, in Burkina Faso, in Liberia, in America is the same method. Now these independent people sat down, did the assessment and said that the country is growing by so much. And indeed there's evidence to show. And people are saying what? They don't believe it. The same people some time ago said we were not doing so well. That one we want to believe it. So how? So we need to understand that these are measurable, tangible, evidential proofs by scholars of no mean repute. And our economy grew. And now, if the economy grew by so much, the two key people who ensured that this happened, the Minister of Finance and the Governor of the Bank of Ghana. So we have somebody who was a deputy governor. I'm a deputy minister. I cannot take credit for what happens in the ministry. No, I can share the credit because I work under my minister. But I cannot jump and say I'm taking the credit. So where was the governor? Where was the minister? Now you have a governor who then, because the Bank of Ghana is also independent, the policies that is put in this country for a long time, especially under the Duffuor regime, has been struggling to attain single-digit inflation. It was one of the targets. For 8 years, they managed 1 month in single-digit inflation, and that one they wouldn't make us sleep. They made all kinds of noise. For the first time in the history of this country, we've had over 20 months of sustained single-digit inflation, back to back to back to back. It has never happened before, and it was under whose tutelage? Is it not Caucus? When we came to power, we had 6 weeks of money in our reserves. To cover import cover. 6 weeks. Okay, he's been able to grow our reserves. Before the recent challenge with the cedi, we were about 4 months of import cover. Is that not a fantastic achievement? That is why when the cedi began to struggle, we were able to draw some of that money to push it. It would have been worse.
And today the cedi is stabilized.
The cedi is stabilized and it's beginning to inch up. Okay, it could have been worse. Do you know? And he said it today that as we speak now, we are paying, this government is paying more to cocoa farmers than what they get on the international market. That is that the amount of money when we sell the cocoa, what we get on the international market, because the government is concerned about cocoa farmers, we are paying them more in city terms. We don't want the cocoa farmer to suffer. So we are paying them more than what we are getting on the international market. It's never happened before. So All these things are happening. We are talking about an economy where there was a deep hole. The deficit, for example, if we talk about deficit, we're talking about countries like Greece and Italy and all those things where they had single-digit deficits, 8%, 9%,
and they're in chaos.
They are in chaos. And we had 14% deficits, and we've been able to gradually turn it around, and we are now in single-digit deficit, and we say we have not done anything. I always use the analogy of a leaking bucket, that when we came to meet a bucket that was leaking. So when you pour water into the buckets, it doesn't stand. You need that bucket to be full to fill the drum. And that is how it percolates to the rest of the economy. So we had to seal the holes. And that is why we stopped inflation, we stopped the deficit, we paid TOR debts, we paid Ghana Commercial Bank debts, we paid railway workers who had not been paid for many years, arrears of teachers and all that, single spine salary. A huge quantum leap in government expenditure, almost 100 doubling of the wage bill. So these are tangible achievements. We are not saying that we've solved all the problems in this country, but looking at it within the context of what we came to meet and what we've been able to do, I can say that indeed it's a gargantuan and unprecedented achievement.
Indeed,
Pakwesi and Mr. Atta played a key role with John Dramani Mahama.
Okay, indeed, it's a gargantuan and unprecedented achievement by the government, and Pakwesi Atta played a key role with His Excellency President John Dramani Mahama. On that note, we go for another short break, and when we come back, I still have with me Honorable Elvis Afriye Ankra, the National Campaign Coordinator of Mahama 2012 campaign, and we are discussing His Excellency President John Dramani Mahama outdoors Pakwesi and Misa. Honorable